Hello, it is July 1st, and we're just trying to get the air conditioner cranked up here so we can all relax and give you some information that we know that you're looking for. You have tuned in to Transparency in Government. As usual, I have my town manager here, your town manager, and we will be updating you on things that are going on around town, answering some of the questions that you may have. And today he's also brought with him Cynthia May, who is our town planner. And for those of you who have not met Cynthia, I have seen some of her work, and she does a really good job, so you're going to be impressed with her, I'm sure. And I'm going to get right down to business and ask Kevin to give us an update on what's been happening for the last month since we talked to you last. Kevin?
Well, Donnie, thanks for having me on again. It's good to be back on the show. And before I go into kind of a formal introduction of Cynthia, I thought I would update both yourself and the audience on a particular project that might be of interest to some folks, and that has to do with the widening of I93 and the building of the infamous 4A exit that I've been hearing about.
The elusive 4A.
The elusive 4A, exactly. I think it feels like the discussion on that's been going on for, what, 30 years now?
I'm pretty sure you were still in high school.
I think I was, yeah. So I actually today, July 1st, just came from a meeting with DOT officials and Senator Shaheen as well. We met down at the field office off of Exit 3, off of I-93, to talk about what's happening with the expansion and where it stands in terms of funding and what it means for the surrounding communities that have exits off of the stretch from Salem up to Manchester. The reality now is New Hampshire, of course, passed a gas tax increase this year, the legislature did, which was a 4-cent increase. That increase is being used to fund the monies that the state didn't have to finally complete the widening of I-93. Prior to the increase, it only had funding up until to Exit 3, and then from Exit 5 on. So
Can I ask you a quick question? The funding for 93, that comes from the state and from the
That's correct.
Federal?
Federally and state monies. So you had funding from Exits 1 up to Exit 3 and then Exit 5 up to the Manchester border. Now the entire corridor is going to be completed with this additional funding. So what does that mean for Londonderry? First thing is most people will notice that Exit 5 is just about, the interchange is just about complete now. There's some road work still left to do off of the exit, but that interchange is mostly complete. Of course, Exit 4 hasn't been touched yet, and there's a lot of work going on at Exit 3. What it means for Londonderry, though, is that we will start to see those exit interchanges be widened now over the next few years. What it also means is the construction, finally, of Exit 4A off of I-93 in between Exits 4 and 5, obviously, which will have a ramp going east into Derry. I raise this issue because there's going to be an informative meeting with DOT officials on July 15th at 6 o'clock p.m. over at the Derry Town Hall chambers. And I believe the public is welcome to go to that meeting. They're having it because there was an article that ran in the Union Leader a few weeks ago which talked about who was going to pay for the funding of that 4A interchange.
Yes.
And the paper stated that one official said that the towns of Londonderry and Derry were going to be on the hook of splitting $19 million for that exit, right? News to me, by the way. So I got on the phone and made a few quick phone calls and was assured almost immediately that that was indeed not the case. That
that's a relief. Yeah,
it is a relief. That the only thing Londonderry and Derry will be on the hook for is the original $5 million, which the voters passed via bond years and years ago.
Many.
And so that money's already there because the bond already passed. So that's all the towns are on the hook for. DOT is going to pick up the tab.
Do we have any interest accrued on that escrow?
We actually haven't, believe it or not, we haven't actually pulled the bond yet on that.
Okay.
And the reason we hadn't done it is, even though the bond was passed by the voters, the reason we hadn't pulled it yet is we didn't know when it was ever going to be needed. So it will be pulled when the time is right. But if people want to find out more information about the timing, what the interchange will look like, because there was some concern that it was also going to go west into Londonderry over Trolley Car Road.
Yes.
That is not in the plans. Again, the
Okay.
plans are for it to strictly go east into Derry, which will go through part of the Woodmont Commons development.
Okay.
So again, that meeting is July 15th at the Derry Chambers for folks who are interested in learning more about that. But it
Terrific.
appears anyway right now that 4A is actually going to happen in our lifetime, and that the funding is there for it.
Fantastic. I feel like I've been here from the beginning.
I know, right?
I have.
Yeah, I think you have. So anyway, so that's the update on
Okay.
that. But with
And that's
that,
hot off the presses? I mean, are we the first one to get that info out?
I think you are.
Wow.
Yes, I think you are. So you can. There's more breaking news right here on your TV show. But with that, though, I want to transition and segue into formally introducing our guest who we introduced at the beginning. This is Cynthia May. Cynthia is our town planner. She's been the town planner now since 2011.
And has avoided being on TV with me.
I'm on TV enough during
You
the
are.
regular
Yep,
weeks.
yep.
Yeah, and Cynthia is one of these background people who doesn't take a share of credit for the work she does, but I'll tell you, she does absolutely incredible work.
Thank you,
And well, it's true, and I hear it all the time from developers, builders, people who have to work with the planning department, that
Yeah.
Cynthia is top notch. They always tell me we've got one of the best planners in the state, and I believe that to be true. So it's I wanted to have her on the show today to talk about what she does as the town planner.
I think that's great.
And
Great idea.
also to talk a little bit about the planning process. When a project comes in, what is the process it goes through when it comes into town hall? So with that, I'll turn it over to Cynthia to talk a little bit about her
Okay.
job.
Thanks, Kevin. And it's nice to finally meet Dottie. We hear about each other all
Yes,
the
we
time,
have. Yep,
but I've never formally met you, so
It is very nice to
I'm
meet you.
glad to have
you're
this
here.
opportunity. Thanks. Let's see. I came to Londonderry just about 3 years ago as a town planner. I replaced Tim Thompson, who was here, I think, for almost 11 years.
Quite a while.
And since that time, we've had a lot of changes in the department. We did a reorganization about 1.5 years ago. I am managing the planning department right now. I have 2 other great people on staff. John Vogel, who's our GIS manager, and he works with literally everybody in the community. I think everybody,
We all know John.
everybody knows John, everybody loves
If you
John.
need a map, you go to John.
John,
Everybody
yeah.
knows John's got every map of everything in Londonderry.
And he also, since the reorganization, has taken up a lot of the comprehensive planning. So he's in the master plan, higher level planning. He takes on a lot. He's
Okay.
currently working with the master plan implementation committee. There's just a lot of things that John does. Most of it's behind the scenes, and if you ask him, he says, I'm your technical guy."
Quick question. Have we ever had an implementation committee before for the
I
master
don't
plan?
think so. I think that
I
this
don't-
is the
yes,
first
I
one,
think- yeah.
and I think
Sounds like a
out of the
great idea.
process, the consultants that we had highly recommended it, and
Kinda makes sense.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
meet once a month right now. That may stretch out a little bit over time as they get into things.
Sure.
And the other member of our staff is Jay Trottier, and she's been with the town for 16 years.
Oh, at least.
Yes. So, she's just awesome. She's been working with the Conservation Commission as a staff person for many,
Right.
many years. With the ZBA, again, for a number of years. She's kind of taken a step back in that area a little bit. But she still manages their applications when they come in. So there's a lot of hands-on still from Jay. And she's become our associate planner, so she's learning
Oh, great.
and doing a lot of plan reviews and setting up. But without her, I would never get anywhere, because she keeps us organized and on target and meeting goals and
Great
meeting
to hear.
deadlines. So I'm just lucky, because it's not very often that you get so many good people that you can work with. As far as what we do, in addition to, I think my first 1.5 years here was spent with working on the master plan and getting through that process and getting it adopted, which that happened last year. And well, primarily I work with current planning, so new projects that are coming in, and that's kind of a good segue into how that process works. And there are a range of things, from somebody who owns a small business who wants to do an addition or make a slight change. They need to come in and meet with staff, and there are a range of things that they may need to do in order to make that change. And more recently, in the last 6 months, we've been doing a lot of that administratively, because the planning board recognizes that their changes really don't have that much of an impact on the community.
Okay.
And it's good for them and their businesses to be able to move forward. So
it's a little more efficient to be
it's
able to
a
handle
little,
it that
yes,
way?
it's definitely a lot more efficient to work that way. So then we have at the other range, we have 600,000 square foot building sites coming in. And typically what we do is assemble all of the key players within the town. Fire department, planning, obviously, the zoning administrator, who is also our building inspector, the Department of Public Works and Engineering, and Kevin a lot of times will sit in, especially on these earlier conversations, so he has a great understanding of what they're proposing, and we talk about schedules, and we talk about the regulations and how to meet all of that. So those initial meetings, there may be one, there may be two, and then
So working that closely with them, you get them off to a really good start.
that's the point,
Yeah.
is to begin a dialogue early and continue that conversation, and that's where we've seen it to be the most successful.
That's great.
And the staff is really good. It is, because you want, whoever's coming in, you want them to be prepared as much as they can be before they go to the planning board.
Exactly.
And
yeah.
the staff is very good about forewarning them, or maybe that's not the right term, but
I think I
letting them
understand what
know
you're-
what will work, what will not work,
Yeah.
and what
Yeah.
modifications will most likely need to be made. Because, as developers are looking for predictability, and they don't want any surprises.
Right.
And there may be a project that comes in that the staff looks at right away and goes, this is never going to fly. And either that, or you're going to have to really
Make some
revise
change,
what
yeah.
you're doing here. Or they may come in and staff may say, yeah, this
Yeah.
is really good, you should go forward with it.
Yeah. It sounds great, because one of the things that I've heard so often in the past is that the process wasn't moving fast enough for people, and they wanted it to move faster in Londonderry. And it sounds like that's what's going to happen with this.
It's a universal problem.
Is it?
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely. When I've gone to conferences, National American Planning Association conferences, this topic comes up every time that you're there. And a lot of communities in the last 5 years have been very proactive about changing their process. They really
That's
put a lot
great.
of focus on it, and that's something that we're going to do here. Or we've been in the process of doing that. So the next step is open that dialogue. We have an open, call us whenever. If you have a question, don't hesitate, because it saves a lot of angst later on down the road when you don't ask the question and you don't do it the way the regulations
Yeah.
want it, then it really does save time. We suggest that they go to the planning board and have what is called a conceptual discussion with them,
Yes.
and they get a non-binding idea of how reasonable and feasible the proposals are,
Okay.
and a little bit of direction as to, well, we'd like you to think about this because our master plan suggests this, or the ordinance or the regulations really. But I would say in the last 2 years, it's been a lot of very positive dialogues
That's great.
at the conceptual level. I haven't seen from my years past the sort of animosity that you had between planning boards
And developers.
And
Yeah.
developers. So
Yeah.
it's a much more cooperative environment
Makes
now.
sense.
And then after that conceptual discussion, they have state requirements to meet with, depending on how much land you're going to clear and develop, wetlands and that. So they're doing that simultaneous with going through the planning process and review process in the town. Every department has a say in based on what their role is.
Right.
All the committees or commissions weigh in, and we go through this what's called design review with all of these groups.
Yes.
They submit their plans for a formal application once they've answered all those questions. So that by the time we get to the planning board, it's really just tightening up the.
It's been refined.
It's
Yeah.
it's ready to go. There's some minor technical issues that have to be buttoned up. There's permits and permit numbers to get from outside agencies, but it's really moved the process along quite nicely.
That's
So,
great.
Yeah.
That is great.
And we do have a lot going on.
Yeah, Kevin was telling us about some of the things that are coming up, and I think you're going to be busy.
Yes.
Yeah.
we are definitely going to be busy.
You have job security for sure.
I certainly do. And Woodmont really hasn't taken off yet, so when that does,
Yeah.
Right.
It'll be
And we have a lot
exactly.
going on even without Woodmont.
Right.
Yes, you
taking
do.
off right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Cynthia had touched upon something when she talked about we're looking at our processes right now to see how we can make them more efficient. And so what we're doing right now is we're undertaking both a zoning audit and kind of a regulations audit to look at what regulations currently make sense, which ones don't make sense, how can we expedite the process more,
Yeah.
make it more efficient, but also our zoning requirements too, looking at what does and doesn't make sense in those right now as well. I don't think we've had a zoning audit in town for quite some time.
it's typically what's done, and this is not unique to Londonderry. You look at that piece that is sort of the hot topic or the hot area.
Yeah.
And you work on that, and it goes, but zoning ordinances have been updated in pieces over many, many years. And sometime between the 1950s and 60s is when a lot of communities adopted zoning. So since that time, you have some of the basics that you had then, and then it's been built upon since. And very often we're borrowing from other communities when we see something successful over
Yep.
there.
Why reinvent the wheel?
And
Yeah.
incorporating it. And sometimes we don't get it quite right. What worked over there, they may have had it a little bit different, may not be working here. And it's not one size fits all.
Right.
So
So are you looking to be more proactive versus reactive?
that would be ideal.
Okay.
It's not
Is it
always the
yeah.
case.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we have to respond to the RSAs. The state has laid out what planning boards and what towns
What you're-
can do.
Yeah.
But yes, we're trying to be predictable and responsive.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So
Sounds good.
The other thing, Dottie, is we've talked a lot in the last few shows about all of the commercial industrial development that's going on, but we have a lot of residential development happening as well. Cynthia, do you want to speak to some of the
Sure.
different residential developments?
the first one that comes to mind, well, I suppose everybody's aware that fairly recently we had 98 units of housing for people 55 and older on the south end near West Road and 102. And that's currently under development. So over the next, I would say 3 to 4 years, you're going to see that built out. And that's single family, individual, but yet part of a little community. Just recently, the planning board approved the 240 unit workforce housing on Perkins Road. And that'll be a mix of 50% workforce, which in Londonderry is actually not significantly
ratio.
lower than market rate. They're all going to be built exactly the same way. That'll be mixed 50% in each building. And so I think that they have some flexibility. They have to always maintain 50%. They can obviously be over. So they hope to start construction later this year. We've had a few smaller single family, 1 to 2, 1 to 3, 1 to 4 lot subdivisions, but we have a new 27 unit site plan. It's a little bit different because it's not restricted by age. They got a variance to do this, but it's adjacent to other multifamily situations. And so it made sense in that location. They're going to be starting the process. So yeah, there is quite a bit of residential going on. And the community needs to, because of everything that's coming in that's going to provide jobs, we really need to have more affordable housing for
Exactly.
people to live in. So
I
that
know
we can
people
live in.
want their kids to be able to live here too
Yes.
when they grow up and get out in the world. So
Absolutely.
that's going to be helpful for them too. I have a question. How closely are you able to work, for example, with the school district to get them prepared for what they're going to see down the line? Like if you go and tell them, there's going to be X number of units and this is probably going to be the price range and we're expecting, 2 bedrooms, 2 kids or something like that. Is that anything that happens? Or?
It does. We interact with them on a regular basis.
Good.
They're very aware of what's coming on.
That's great.
Just a few months ago, I know we exchanged information for that purpose, but they are part of the process. There are 2 school board members on the planning board.
Great.
So
Okay. Wasn't
So they know
even
what's
aware of
going on,
that.
yeah.
Didn't
They do.
realize that. Okay.
There's by our town ordinance, we have to have a school board, at least one school board member
Okay.
on the planning board, which makes sense.
Yeah, it
you know,
absolutely
to make
makes
sure
sense.
that they're kept abreast.
Yeah. As people are always saying, it's coming out of the same pocket.
Yeah,
It is.
it is.
We might as well work together
It
a little
is.
bit.
And we have another workforce housing development, Neighbor
That's right.
Works.
Neighbor Works. I'm sorry, I forgot about that. This is
Is even
78
less than
units,
perfect again?
townhouse.
There's just so much going on, I'm not
Right?
surprised.
Yeah, 78 townhouse units. That'll be built, I think, over 2 years. It's up near the intersection of, it's Mammoth Road, going north of here. It's not too far up the street.
Okay.
Right next door to it is the Whittemore Estates.
Oh,
Elderly.
yeah, okay, the one that's would go from
We
here would be
actually,
on the
they
right,
subdivided
yes,
that
okay.
from this larger piece. And they're
Oh.
going to continue to build, I think there are 11 more units at Whittemore Estates.
Oh, okay.
And then 78 units. And then they still preserved, I forget how many, 20-some acres of conservation land as well. So they're ready, they're going to
Wow.
start construction probably in the next week or 2.
We're all going to need to go see John and get one of those maps,
Yeah.
Yeah, he's going to be updating
just to
them every
figure out
year.
where we are anyway.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Donnie, I know you had a question, or a question came in with regard to impact fees.
Yes.
And it might be a good time to
And
bring
whether or
those
not
up
are
now.
we, the impact fee situation, I think we've gone over it a lot. People understand what
Yep.
it was. Now, is it wrapped up? Are we now on the right track with that? Are we all
Almost.
paid off
Well,
and
so
ready to
here's-
move forward?
Yeah, well, so yes, we're ready to move forward.
Okay.
But it's in its last piece of litigation, and what I
Okay.
mean by that is that the claimant in this case, who's representing, the lawyer who's representing all the different claimants, they've appealed to the New Hampshire Supreme Court on this particular matter, in that they're saying they're owed additional monies in
Okay.
addition to what the town has already given back. They brought it to court at the Superior Court level, where they lost on all counts. And if anyone wants to go on and read that judgment, they can go onto the town website and find it on there.
Okay.
So they ruled in favor of Londonderry on that. They did have the right to appeal it to the New Hampshire Supreme Court, which they have done.
Okay.
And that's their last means of trying to get any recourse.
Right.
So we've our attorney's been vigorously representing the town on this, and we're cautiously optimistic that the Supreme Court will rule the same way that the Superior Court did, and then at that point it'll be done with litigation.
Okay.
With regard to monies, all of the expired impact fees that we still had in the account have all been returned to the court, and the folks who are owed those have been told they can receive those monies from the court.
Okay.
In the meantime, we continue to return all upcoming expired impact fees. So every 6 months, the new ordinance every 6 months requires us to return any expired impact fees.
So we
which,
can't get in that position again. We'll be right up
Correct.
to date on what's going
That's
on
right.
with that money.
That's right.
Just got to make everybody happy.
That's right. Now, in the meantime, so people will say, well, okay, well, so does that mean we can't collect impact fees? And so in the meantime, we've suspended our impact fee program. And what a lot of people may not quite understand is that you can't just levy impact fees arbitrarily.
Willy-nilly, as they say.
Yes, willy-nilly. There's certain stipulations a town has to meet in order to assess impact fees. They have to make up a deficiency the town has. They can't make up, if the town wants a new fire station per se, you can't say, well, we're going to pay for the entire fire station out of impact fees. You only can pay for the deficiency. At the same time, the town has to be meeting certain growth parameters.
It
So
shows
there's
a commitment to actually doing that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So there's a lot of things the town has to have in place in order to even levy impact fees. So what we have found is being something that's much more manageable and perhaps more effective right now is just doing developer agreements with different developers that come into town, or doing offsite improvements agreements with them when it's necessary and appropriate to do it. And Cynthia's been doing that with various developments. In fact, we have a developers agreement with the FedEx development that's going off of Industrial Road in
Right, yeah,
Pettingill
yeah.
there, where they've agreed to put in a,
They're going to put in the traffic light and the right
Ah,
turn
that's-
lane from Pettingill East onto Hardy
Mm-hmm.
Road. Their actual impact was only was less than 20% of what the ultimate impact is going to be over the same period.
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't responsible for any more than 20%.
But they took that on.
And if it was an impact fee, that's all the town would have gotten. We would have collected it
Yeah.
and had to wait for the other 80 or to get match from some other entity where this is a town intersection.
Yeah.
We were totally on the hook for it. So they also had 2 other lesser impacts, and what they did was come to an agreement that, you know, we'll take on this one, and the other 2, if the town agrees, will remain the way they are today, and they really were not bad at all. So,
Great.
and that's how it works.
Sounds
They
like
made
a
the
good
offer.
way to do it, yeah.
yeah. And again, it's so that, you know, for people who say, oh, well, is the town not taking into an account an impact a developer might have? No, we are. We're just doing it by different means. And in all honesty, perhaps a more effective means in doing it this way rather than by the impact fees.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
This actually kind of could segue into, talk to us about TIF.
TIF districts. So there's been a lot of talk about TIF district, and I believe Jay Hobson from the Londonderry Times is going to be writing a very comprehensive article on this in the Londonderry Times that will be coming out this week, because I gave him a lot of information, and I know our town attorney did as well, with regard to how a TIF district gets established, how it's supposed to be done in certain towns. Because there's a lot of the state RSAs come into play when a town or municipality is establishing a TIF, as to who does it. Is it by town meeting? Is it by the voters? Is it by the town council? And it varies from municipality to municipality. The authority that was granted to the town council to establish the TIF district was done so when the town adopted RSA 162K. I'm not going to go into the details.
I don't have that memorized.
Yeah, if anyone wants to go look, and they go look it up. But what it does is by a town adopting 162K, that gives the municipal body the ability, the authorization to then go ahead and establish the TIF district. And in this case, the authority lies under our town charter, the town council, to be able to do that. 162
But they have criteria that they have to follow to make that decision. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
They have to do it by resolution. There has to be a public hearing, which there was.
Okay.
This was all done back in the fall. 162-K was adopted by the town way back in 1985, believe it or not. So that had already been adopted by the town via town meeting, as it was supposed to be back in 1985. The town council then had the authority this year under our town charter, or last year, to be able to establish that TIF district. And so what happens now is once that district is established, it then sets up a separate account up there so that any new revenues, the baseline is the existing revenues from property taxes. Any new revenues that come in, instead of going into the general fund, go into this separate TIF account and can be used for infrastructure improvements in that
area?
particular area. Okay, you don't need to float a bond in order to be able to use those monies. See, a lot of people think that you can only use those monies if you're going to pay down a debt. But the reality is you don't have to do that. You can take an expenditure out of that account and pay for something, an improvement, without incurring any debt. Suppose, this is just an example, suppose that most of the road was built up there. The town council decided they wanted to build whatever portion was left of the road. Say it was $500,000 and the account had $2 million in it. It could use $500,000 out of that account to pay for the completion of that road.
And they don't have to get any further authorization than what they already have.
Correct, because the district's been established and they're not incurring any debt. But if they were incurring debt, they would have to get authorization from the voters to be able to do that. Now, if the money in there is not used, if there's money that remains dormant for 3 years, 50 up to at least 50%, could be all of it if the town council decides so, has to be returned to the general fund at that point. It's not allowed just to stay in that that account forever. The other thing is that the town council can decide at any time to put all of the money back into the general fund if it wants to do that. So, you know, Councilor Farrell at the last town meeting when this issue, last council meeting when this issue was raised, I think said it best, and that is the council is going to take everything very slowly. There's going to be no, you know, decisions made on a whim. They're going to look at how this whole area starts to progress now that we're seeing a lot of development up there. It might be that none of the money is used up there and it all gets returned into the general fund. So, but it's going to be taken slowly up there.
And if you needed the money in order to have that district to continue to grow the way you want it to grow, you've got it and you can use it that way.
Right.
And eventually what I'm thinking is, I think the question that people have had is, well, why isn't that money coming off my tax bill? And I think what I'm hearing you say is that, well, it's not coming off now, but we're improving the area up there, we're bringing in more people that will pay more taxes, and it's going to pay us back in the long run to do it this way.
Yes, and again, it may be that, okay, the council decides next year not to put the money back in the general fund, but maybe by year 2 it decides to do that. So you will see it, the taxpayer in the town will see that revenue at some point. It's just a matter of when will they see that particular revenue. You know, it's I don't think any coincidence that I think it was in October that the council designated that area TIF, and almost immediately all this development started going in.
That's,
and I think that's important for people to remember that, because getting money 2 years from now is a lot better than getting no money for the next 10 years.
right. Yeah.
You know, and
And I think there's been a misconception that by establishing a TIF district, that you're actually doing a really big favor to whatever business is coming in there. That's to their benefit and not to the town's benefit, but that's obviously not the case.
No, I don't believe it is. No, but again, it's certainly, I think what it showed the developments coming in is that there's a commitment on the town side to say this area is important for us for future development. And now we're seeing a lot of growth and activity happening up there. So.
Well, I have a question about something totally unrelated to these things, but the really big hot button issue is guns in the Musquash. And how can we get this resolved? I mean, it's so hard because they have conservation property that should be available for the use of the community to go up there and do their walking and their nature, whatever. But it could get a little scary if you know the guy on the next path over has got a gun. Well, so and they're making noise.
The council has recognized that, you know, it's an issue that can't be ignored. I don't think anyone has what the best resolution is yet. And so what they've decided to do is, beginning in September, they're going to hold a series of workshops with the people in the community that are most interested in this, whether they be for continued shooting in the Musquash or against, but hold a series of workshops to try to come to a consensus that's going to work for everyone in the community. Because again, I think if you were to poll the council today, there'd be varying degrees of what they think should happen up there. So this is a way for them to be able to gather more information about what is actually occurring. The reason why they decided to hold off until the fall to start holding these workshops is because a lot of people are on vacation during the summer, and they wanted to have as much community input as possible on the issue. So they clearly recognize that there is an issue up there. It's got to be addressed. Just how do you address it is what they're trying to get a handle on. And so if people are interested in that, be watching. There's a council meeting in July, one in August. Probably in the August meeting, they'll announce the dates of when the workshops will start happening.
And I'm sure you'll use whatever means at your disposal to get that out to the community anyway, so that they will
Yeah,
they will come.
absolutely.
So that's
And
good.
you know what we always tell folks too, if there's a safety concern up there, if people are concerned about you know, activity happening in the Musquash, they should report that to the police so that there's a record of this. Oftentimes people will, you know, be concerned about some activity that's happening up there, but they don't inform the authorities.
They complain to their neighbors.
They'll complain to the neighbors, or they may come down and see me at town hall, which is, you know, which is fine. I don't mind hearing from them, but they really should, you know, so there's a record of, because it makes it easier for us to know exactly how many complaints there are,
Right.
formal complaints there are about activity that's going on up there.
I totally understand. When I was the director of the cable department, it's like, well, call me. Don't tell your neighbor that your cable went out and you didn't get reimbursed. Call me and I can take care of that for you. But couldn't read minds and didn't know what was going on unless people tell you. And that's
Right.
really important. And I think part of the reason that we're doing this show is so that people know that you are approachable, that you don't have a closed door,
Right.
that if they need to know something, they can get that information.
Well, and I was going to say too, and you know, sometimes people might think, oh boy, I don't want to bother the police with that. They've got enough going on that, you know, this doesn't rise to the level. But I think they would appreciate hearing and knowing
Right.
if people, again, have concerns about activity, not just even in the Musquash, but anywhere in town, any of the conservation areas. If there's concerns, call the police,
Yeah.
so that there's a record made of that
Absolutely.
particular complaint.
It only makes sense.
Yeah.
It only makes sense.
Yeah.
Was there anything else that you wanted to let people know about?
You know, just Old Home Days coming up.
It is.
The weekend of the 17th, 18th,
Sounds
or
right.
16th, 17th. Where hopefully it'll be a beautiful weekend in
August.
In August,
yeah,
yes,
August,
not in
yeah,
July,
thank you.
in August. You can never prepare too early
No,
for it.
no.
But it should be a spectacular event as usual.
It's pretty
The
popular.
Fireworks will be on Friday night, and of course the parade is on Saturday, but there's other activities going on during the weekend. People can go to the Old Home Day website to find out all the different activities that will be going on for that weekend.
And I know the Access Center is signing up volunteers to cover events. So if you want to tape the parade, no, excuse me, we record now, we don't tape anymore. If you want to record
listen to
the
records,
parade,
right?
yeah. Or, you know, they get someone for the baby contest, those kinds of things, and, you know.
Absolutely. The other thing I'll
It's
mention.
fun to get it on the record for those people who couldn't be there.
Yeah. The other thing I'll mention too is that in this year is the 10-year anniversary of the police department, the building,
Oh, the building.
being open. So there's going to be an open house for the public to go into their taxpayer-owned police department and check it out
Do
for
the tour,
themselves. I
yeah.
got to tell you, you walk into that building and it's where it was built
Brand new.
yesterday. Yeah, they've
They
done
have
such
been-
an incredible job of keeping that
Maintaining it,
building
yeah.
up. And I think as a taxpayer, you got to really like that because
I think that shows a great deal of respect for the
it
taxpayer
definitely
when they do
does. Yeah, definitely
that.
does. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
That's great.
absolutely.
Okay. Cynthia, anything you'd like to add?
I don't think so.
I thank you very much for being
Thanks for
here.
asking me. Thank you for suggesting it, Kevin.
I'm glad you came on, Cynthia. And again, if people, Cynthia's got her department's got an open door policy as
do.
well.
Good,
And
good.
really, I would encourage anyone who's thinking about building in town or developing land or whatever, talk to the staff first. You know,
It only makes sense.
Yeah, they're more than happy to
Yeah.
talk to you
Yeah.
and give you, if they don't know the answer to a question, they'll research it, find it out, or
Yeah, and I think, you know, if there's something that you've really brought across today, it's that you want to help them. You're not trying to deter them from
Exactly.
anything.
Yeah, we
You want to help
facilitate.
them accomplish their goals too. And that should make people step up and talk to you more often, I think, too. So,
Hopefully.
absolutely.
okay, so
Well, great.
you all set?
All set.
I thank you very much for being here too. I know that things have been really busy and we appreciate this extra, almost an hour. Wow, we talked a lot today.
That's all right.
It went
a lot of stuff to
fast.
go over.
I'd like to thank you all for watching. I hope that you will continue to send in your questions and your comments to either Kevin, myself, or leave them here at the Access Center. Contact information is at the end of the show. And I'm going to put out a little plug for the Londonderry Access Center. They are always looking for volunteers to run cameras. There's new equipment coming in that they'd be happy to train you on. It's a fun thing to do, and it's a community service as well. So I know you'd feel good if you came up here and you started volunteering, and you will absolutely adore the trainer. She is just great to work with. So thank you very much for watching, and please get in touch before the next show, which will be done the end of July, and let us get your questions on the air too. Thank you.